Hello and welcome to our budget special show on India Today Global with me, Ishita Mitra. Now, tomorrow is a big day for Indian economy. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will unveil her 8th budget. Now, there are a lot of questions and anticipation, and we'll try to answer some of them, including: are Indians overtaxed? How India's budget journey reflects its economic evolution, and more importantly, could the Indian middle class get some relief tomorrow? All of this and much more, so let's get started. Ever feel like your paycheck vanishes before you can enjoy it? Well, sometimes income tax, GST, they can hit hard, while in countries like UAE, Qatar and Kuwait, they thrive with zero income tax. So why do Indians pay so much tax, and where does all of this money go? Stay tuned as we uncover the truth behind India's tax burden.
Imagine this. You got your first job. You have all the money to spend and you are living your best life. But then comes tax season. And that sends you into a spiral. You start wondering, why do I need to give tax? Why are these taxes so high? This is the question we answer today. Why do Indians pay such high taxes? India's taxation system is a wild mix of direct and indirect taxes. Kind of like a buffet where you don't really get to pick your plate. You've got direct taxes like income tax that takes a good bite out of your paycheck, and indirect taxes like GST, which means you're paying taxes on literally everything: your morning chai, your streaming subscription, and even that overpriced popcorn at the movies. Let's talk about the real MVPs of the Indian tax system, the middle class. Only 2.2% of Indians actually pay income tax, but a vast majority of the population is shelling out on indirect taxes. But what about the countries where people pay way less in taxes? Let's take a world tour of tax-friendly nations where the government doesn't raid your paychecks. The United Arab Emirates has no personal income tax, with a total tax burden of just 14.8%. The country's oil wealth allows the government to fund infrastructure and public services without relying on income tax revenue, making it an attractive destination for expatriates and businesses. Like the UAE, Kuwait doesn't impose personal income tax, keeping its total tax burden at 12.8%. The country's economy is heavily reliant on oil exports, which finance government expenditures without significant taxation on residents. With a total tax rate of just 11.3%, Qatar maintains its revenue through oil and gas exports. There is no personal income tax, making it a desirable location for professionals seeking tax-free salaries. India's taxation system is complex, and while taxes are essential for national development, many taxpayers feel that the returns do not justify the burden. As discussions around tax reforms continue, the question remains: how can the system be improved to ensure that taxpayers receive fair value for their contributions? Let us know your answers in the comments.
For decades, the Indian budget has been more than just numbers. It's been a spectacle, a policy blueprint, and a reflection of the nation's economic journey. But did you know that the way budget is presented now has changed dramatically? From handwritten documents to digital tablets, the evolution of India's budget mirrors the country's transformation. So let's take a look.
India's first ever budget was presented on February 18, 1860 by James Wilson. He was a British economist and finance member of the Viceroy's Council. The budget was a simple, handwritten document outlining the British government's financial policies, including India's first income tax. These early budgets were primarily focused on generating revenue for the British administration. So, for around years, the budget remained a confidential exercise with little public participation. The documents were manually written, duplicated, and stored under tight security. There was no fanfare involved, just a formal presentation in the British Legislative Assembly. Then came independence. August 15th, 1947 marked India's independence, and with it came the first union budget. It was presented on November 26, 1947 by R.K. Shanmughan Chetty. It was still a paper-heavy process, with thick files detailing the country's economic situation post-partition. So, from the 1950s to the 1990s, finance ministers carried bulky documents in a signature leather briefcase, a tradition inherited from UK. Each budget speech was a carefully crafted financial roadmap, often shaping India's economic policies for years. Then came the historic 1991 budget by Manmohan Singh under Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. This was the budget that changed India forever, ushering in economic liberalization, foreign investments, and the end of the license Raj. But even then, the budget remained a heavily printed affair, with thousands of copies distributed across government offices, media houses, and institutions. Later in 2000s, first steps towards digitalization were taken. Computers and digital records slowly replaced handwritten calculations, making budget preparation more efficient. However, the final presentation still relied on printed documents, which were manually compiled and transported under strict security. Despite advances in technology, the physical printing of the budget remained a time-consuming and secretive process. For weeks before the budget, officials and print workers would be locked inside the North Block, disconnected from the outside world to prevent leaks. And this tradition of secrecy continued until 2021. A historic change came in that year. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had already replaced the iconic budget briefcase with a Bahi Khata in 2019. But in 2021, she went a step further, introducing India's first ever paperless budget, presented on a digital tablet. The shift was driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, which disrupted traditional processes. The government launched the Union Budget mobile app, allowing instant access to budget documents for MPs, officials, and the public. No more bulky printed copies, but rather the budget was just a tap away. With real-time updates on the Union Budget mobile app, citizens and businesses could access key policy decisions instantly in 2022 budget. In 2023, the government expanded digitalization efforts. Chatbots and digital dashboards became an added feature, which helped businesses analyze tax changes in real time. In 2024, with the growing digital economy, budget documents started becoming available in multiple languages on a voice-enabled platform. So, as India prepares for the 2025 budget, AI and big data are now deeply integrated into the budgeting process.
And earlier today, Shishir Sinha, a prominent business journalist, spoke to India Today Global on the state of Indian economy ahead of budget, and he also addressed the question of whether Indian middle class will see some relief in this budget or not. Listen in to this conversation. What would be the overarching theme of the budget tomorrow?
I believe considering the geopolitical uncertainty and considering the consumption is getting slower in India,
Yes.
the budget will try to focus more on providing more money in the hand of public so that domestic consumption can be promoted.
Yes.
And once we promote the domestic consumption, we can face the external challenge also. So that could be the overarching theme of this budget. So this time we are expecting a new income tax law, because the income tax law, which was enacted in 1961, and it's almost more than 6 decades. And in fact, the kind of amendments we have seen in the Income Tax Act, we need a new law. In fact, an exercise was taken way back in 2010 when the then government decided to bring direct tax code. Unfortunately, it couldn't materialize. But this time, the finance minister, while presenting the budget in July, she gave a target of 6 months to prepare a new direct tax code. So under the new direct tax system, or new direct tax code, or new direct tax law, whatsoever name you want to give, we are expecting that some kind of exemptions could be given under the new income tax regime, because that is very, very critical, considering the consumption aspect of the economy. And the two exemptions which are being talked at this moment is, one is the HRA and the second one is the NPS. So these are the two exemptions can be given under NPS. Under the old income tax exemption, old income tax scheme, please do not expect any change in that, because the government has very clear thing in mind that it needs to be phased out. So under the new tax regime, the one part is the exemption part, and the second part is some tinkering could be done in the slab system so that some money could be given in the hand of the public or the common taxpayer, or more precisely, we say middle class. And today, if you can remember, what Prime Minister said in the morning, just before the beginning of the budget session, that may Goddess
Yes, the
Lakshmi
poor middle
uh,
class.
shows blessings on poor and the middle class. That is clear indication that something is coming out for the middle class.
Exactly, some breather, some kind of rebate, or of course tax relief, as you said, could be in for the middle class. But how the fiscal, how the fiscal roadmap will actually cater to this middle class angst that we've been seeing growing in India, we'll get to know tomorrow. Well, that's all we have for you in this show. Stay tuned to India Today Global, where we'll continue to bring you coverage on Budget 2025.